Really what got me to this point of what I'm teaching is 20 years of chronic pain that never went away. I had 3 shoulder surgeries. I actually graduated PT school in an arm in a sling because I used to be a swimmer in hypermobility, multidirectional instability. This one was a near capsular shift and that fixed the instability, but I was left with pain for 20 I couldn't sleep on my shoulder for 20 years. But I eliminated that in 3 days. That's why I'm here. And I've also had, probably by the time I was 30, 2 back surgeries, so I had back pain that was there for 20 years, and my profession never helped me. But I kept looking, because who wants to live in chronic pain, right? Well, I kept looking for answers, and I found them, and I no longer have pain. And when I do hurt, I know how to get rid of it. So how do you understand how something works? You take it apart. You understand each component that makes up the whole. You understand how each component works in relationship to the others. And the whole is made up of individual parts. So that's the essence of what I'm talking about. What was the title? We're looking at the dysfunctions of muscle, fascia, and extracellular matrix. We're taking each piece of what we work with, looking at the dysfunction of each piece, and then putting it back together. I mean, you can't have an engine run if you have a piston out, okay? Or you can't make a cake without baking powder. Do you know what I mean? Like every piece plays a part of the whole, and that's how I approach physical therapy. So all of this started, this whole package that you're seeing now started in about 2011, 2012. That's when I got a paradigm shift in the way I saw the human body, and all of this evolved out of that. So what do we work with as PTs? So we work with muscles, which is made of actin, myosin, and the neural components. Fascia, which is collagen. It's throughout the entire body. I'm tired of, I'll try not to go into too many tangents. This profession, and there's a historical reason that this profession is taught in segments. We look at this body part, this body part, this body part, but we don't put it all together. But that's based on history of how the body was studied, how they did anatomy. Do you know what I mean? But I would say in the last 20 years, the whole fascia thing has come much more into play. Of course,
it allowed me to build it very easily.
Do they teach about the anatomy of fascia?
They start.
Okay. This is good.
Now keep in mind, High Point is a little ahead of their time.
But it's still trying to catch a
that's
ton of
okay.
wind with a teaspoon. Like PT school is just like.
That's okay. I'm glad to hear there's this little nudge. But as you'll find out, my beef is that basic anatomy, you have to understand it to treat the body. And they don't teach basic anatomy of the muscle. Or if they do, what is muscle inhibition? Do they teach that?
They do. Now I'm a little rusty because it's been a few years.
But it's okay. This is good. I'm glad I get your perspective because you've got a bunch of old farts over here. That's me included.
The way I remember it in school is basically the disconnect between the motor neurons and the actual muscle structures.
Yes.
And, I personally was taught a lot about muscle fiber makeup.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was from undergrad or not.
Okay. But that's jumping back here. I will keep us on track. I'm the leader. And so the other piece of the puzzle I figured out through hands-on, I'm a very hands-on therapist, was there's a whole component of the extracellular matrix. And you'll see how all this stuff combines. It's really cool. That's why I'm here. Okay, you need to understand each by their whole. So we talk about muscles. What dysfunction can occur? Muscle inhibition trigger points. Do they teach trigger points? God, they're finally, maybe.
Mostly in electives is where I got most of that from.
Okay.
They
touch on it.
They do teach it.
She did a dry needling elective in school.
Well,
I thought that was really
that's up and
progressive.
coming.
Yeah.
That's up and coming. But if you don't understand the basics, dry needling can't even help you.
Right.
Fascia. What's dysfunction can occur with fascia?
Scar tissues.
Tightening, just tightening different.
Doesn't slide and glide.
Yeah.
Yep.
Adhesions.
Yep. Okay, the extracellular matrix. I guess.
Are you a rolfer?
No.
Mhm.
So some of the fun stuff I've learned about extracellular matrix, again, going back to anatomy, and you'll learn some really cool words, is that the fluid in our extracellular matrix can become viscous. And what's really fascinating is as we work through this, you'll see that inhibition, fascial dysfunction, extracellular matrix dysfunction, everything leads to stagnant areas in tissue. I mean, I used to think, like, how can something not move? Well, it can stop moving. It's still getting blood flow, but it's not moving.
At least not how it should.
Mhm.
Pretty sure that
I
more
think-
viscous means it
More
doesn't
viscous means it doesn't move. It's like Jello.
Thicker oil.
It's thicker. It doesn't move.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have thicker
But in
fluid
a
to move
joint,
through.
that's a positive thing, I think.
move. I thought typically when
Because it
fluids heat
protects
up,
the
they-
I'm
joint.
not
But
talking
you're
about
saying in
joints.
fascial planes,
Yeah.
maybe not so good.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Increased viscosity is decreased movement.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Typically when fluids
Yeah.
heat
Think
up,
about
they-
really thick oil.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know,
But-
dirty oil. is-
Typically when fluids
Yeah.
heat up, they get less viscous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I was
Yeah.
thinking about the,
So again, altered fluid viscosity can happen. But yeah, it's a good analogy when things. And that, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so here's the 4 dysfunctions. You've got your inhibition, your trigger points, your fascial restrictions, or stickiness, I call it, and viscosity changes. All of these interplay. One leads to another, leads to another. There's no starting point. If you had to pin me down, muscle inhibition is the biggest dysfunction that I treat. But what's amazing is all of these cause loss of movement and strength. I have narrowed my practice down to is addressing each of these dysfunctions. If you address each of these dysfunctions, you correct the problems, you correct the whole. It's really just that simple to me. Okay, why I name it muscles are predictable? Because each component has defined properties via anatomy and physiology. The anatomy and physiology are consistent. Consistent properties means consistent and predictable functions and dysfunctions. Predictable properties of predictable tissues on a predictable skeleton with predictable anatomy results in predictable outcomes. So this takes out the guesswork of
It's
some of the
fairly
things.
standardized.
Yeah, it really takes out a guesswork. And when I'm treating someone, I in my head have like a checklist. You know, if I checked for inhibition, did I check for a referred, you know, does pain from trigger points? Did I address the extracellular? I've made people's knees move 30 degrees better just by addressing the ECM problem with vibration. I mean, it's amazing. But again, it's a little checklist. Did I go through each of these dysfunctions with my person? So yeah, that's why I named it muscles are predictable. Because they are. Oh, thank you. Okay, so that's what I just said. Predictable properties of predictable tissues on a predictable skeleton with predictable anatomy results in predictable outcomes. Yeah, see, I jumped ahead of myself. It's almost like a checklist. You know, it's not a protocol. It just means you understand the individual pieces of the whole. And what's so cool, I love some of my stories. I had this really sweet lady in her late 70s. She came in, she sat down, and I said, you know, what can I do? She's like, I hurt. And that's all she could say. And you know what? That didn't faze me because I knew what to do. Like, I didn't have, you don't have to tell me any more than that. Checklist. Boom, boom, boom. Where are we starting? We start with shoulders, start with knees. Where are we starting? I love this one. So, I am not a rolfer, but I've been to rolfing. Love rolfing. And a year or so ago, I went to a rolfer here, and it was a little too rough. And what can happen with too rough? It kind of inhibited some muscles, meaning it shut some stuff down. Oh my God, I had a headache. And I needled the snot out of my neck, and I went to my massage therapist. And this headache went on for 2 weeks. And finally, I'm like, okay, the basics. What supports everything? The glute. So the glute max, my right one, for whatever reason, was inhibited. I'm not making this up. I needled it, stimmed it, and my headache went away.
Magic.
Basics.
I remember that.
Basics. And then basic anatomy. Go back to the basics. The glutes are the roots. They support everything. Why is my headache not going away? And trust me, I have a lot of tricks up my sleeve. I needled my butt and my headache went away.
That's weird.
That is such a classic story of understand the basics, understand the anatomy, understand and biomechanics. Okay, so this is really cool. So this is where I was bringing in, like, what are they teaching, yada yada, and this sets the stage, okay? Our paper proposes that in order to effectively alter movement kinematics and forces during high-speed movements, there must be an advancement in clinical reasoning. Us old people here would be like, yeah, there does. We also propose that implementation of a more holistic framework will enhance our understanding of the neuromuscular system, foster creativity, and rehab prescription, ultimately improve clinical outcomes. Well, that's the goal of every, physical therapy. So I like what they wrote because it's highlighting, and this is 2018. Okay, it's not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like is several things. They're trying to redirect the field of physical therapy to look at complex movements in a larger context and not isolate individual parts, which they're doing at High Point.
They were teaching us stuff from this paper, basically.
Look what paper I bring up.
I know, like, this is fun. This is a review.
What they highlighted that muscles work in synergistic patterns. Duh. Like, if we didn't know that, then maybe. Anyway, isolated strengthening approach is too simplistic to address complex movements. Yes and no. Again, each part makes up the whole, but I like what they're saying. Introducing the anatomical evidence of myofascial change as possibly playing a role in controlling movement. Trust me, fascia didn't exist in my day. And fascia. How about? And when did you?
They didn't, like, I'm not.
And when did you graduate?
2016.
Yeah. So.
And it was not.
I graduated 21.
It was not
I also went to
discussed.
High Point. And don't ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. I mean, think about this, guys. This is a huge anatomical structure of our entire body, and we just ignore it, pretend like it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And did you know the body is one interconnected muscular system? Yeah, we came from one cell, so of course we're connected. Now, here's what I really appreciate is finally a profession of PhD PTs are recognizing the work of a non-PT, Tom Myers. He has done amazing work in understanding fascia. But see, Ida Rolf started this in the 1940s. She was a PhD biochemist, but for some reason she got interested in the fascia, a world of fascia, and her work goes back to the 50s. And then her school of structural integration, Rolfing, started in the 70s. So Tom actually studied with Ida. So we're going back to the 1940s and 50s, and wait a minute, now we're finally catching up in 2018. The PT world's finally like, oh, there's fascia. Again, I'm highlighting the fact that they are appreciating the work that Tom Myers has done based on Ida Rolf's work. And his first book was published in 2001. And my favorite word, biotensegrity, the human body is held together in tension. I love that.
That was drilled into
Word invented in this article, or is this been a word?
No. Biotensegrity's been around since like 50s. Buckminster Fuller was around in like I think 1950s. He was an architect who developed the geodesic dome, which is a structure held together fully in tension. We are held in together by tension, not compression. If you think about it, our bones actually float in our soft tissues. Our bones don't sit on things, and this is literally, I quoted this from an article. Although the existence of muscle synergy seems logical, this remains controversial. So we can't use logic in our reasoning, but okay. And here's another roadblock. A recent systematic review found strong evidence supporting the anatomical existence of several of Tom Myers' myofascial chains. Well, does that mean the other ones aren't real and the ones
so
they
they're not
dissected
understood.
are? But see the limit in our profession is that we're dependent too much on research. Muscle synergies seem logical, but it's controversial. Of course muscles work in synergy.
Yeah, what's the controversy? I don't, like, what is
What-
their literal argument for controversy?
What the controversy ended up being in this article saying is the ways it's measured are not consistent. So
They
you're
don't have a established functional outcome measure for it.
exactly.
That's why it was more of a systematic review versus a meta.
Sure.
And it's a
Sure.
problem in our profession. How do you measure a fascial release? How do you measure
Right. True.
that? You know, there are a lot
And
of
that's fair. I mean,
we've
it's
talked
hard
about
to
this.
measure that. It's
Yeah.
almost more of a
You can't
feeling.
measure.
You feel it.
Yeah.
In manual therapy all the time, you're feeling things happen. You're not measuring them happen.
And that's the roadblock in our profession.
Yeah.
What we work with, we don't have tools to measure. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
right.
You
Exactly.
can't
True.
quantify it well.
Exactly.
Right,
true.
right. Because you
Exactly.
can't quantify it.
It doesn't
can't
throw it out, though.
Right.
Right.
But the problem is, in our profession, they do throw it out.
Of course, because they have to have an evidence-based practice.
Or they have a harder time
they can't-
of being able to globalize it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
But that doesn't make sense. You can't throw out logic.
No, I agree.
So-
You don't just not treat something because you don't have an established
Right.
measuring
Standard.
tool for it.
Right.
There is some,
Art and
there is
science,
some
art and
reasonableness about empirical observations, and I
But
think
that's not accepted in peer review journals. And if it's not peer reviewed
At the higher
publication,
levels.
it's not evidence based.
Which
Yeah,
is,
it's a start, though.
yes.
I did read a really good article that talked about, and this is one of my arguments, that maybe our way of measuring is poor.
Exactly.
Maybe we're looking at it wrong, and I can't remember all the
Maybe we just need
details.
better tools.
Well, sure.
Or a different understanding of empirical evidence. If I do the same thing over and over and over for 10 years and get the same results,
Exactly.
that's
How's that-
evidence.
Yeah, how's that not evidential?
That's evidence.
See.
Yeah.
Right.
But we're gonna accept a couple of his chains because we found those connected. Well, maybe your dissection sucks and you just missed it.
You actually cut through it.
I know,
Right.
Right, like, oops.
Maybe oops, I cut that chain. It doesn't exist. I cut it. It's terrible. I love it. So the challenge listed by the authors: identify methods by which these myofascial chains are integrated into an intervention design is a task of the future. Research. They have research, not clinical practice. I'm like, what about clinical practice? All right, a change in mindset could create a paradigm shift that allows the clinician or researcher to consider the multifactorial nature of complex systems, identify patterns that are occurring on a more global scale. Okay, so we need a paradigm shift. Guess what? I have a paradigm shift. Ta-da! They want advancement in clinical reasoning may come from an unexpected, unrecognized source. It's the way I'm approaching is a huge advancement in clinical reasoning, but it's not coming from where people are going to look for it. A new view on rehabilitation which can foster creativity, improve clinical outcomes, which is what this system does, and which it has. I mean, my muscle spatial system is not limited by peer-reviewed research outcomes. It is based on anatomy. And that's my whole point. I've written 2 articles on this topic, both been rejected by peer-reviewed journals, but I've always said it's based on anatomy and physiology. This is based in solid science. It's not out there like woo-woo stuff. Muscles Are Predictable is a method by which these myofascial chains are integrated into intervention design. It is. I mean, because we're going to look at the fascia, because that's one of the systems that's dysfunctional. Okay, so what are they asking? Muscles Are Predictable presents a change in thinking to produce a paradigm shift in one's approach to a complex system. And I'm telling you, needling my butt to get rid of a headache wouldn't have happened if I hadn't developed this way of thinking. And also, and we'll get to this near the end, as sort of a composite. The way I treat low back pain now has completely revolutionized every single patient I treat with low back pain. Just your generic low back pain. There are clear answers that have been missed. Again, this is come out of 12 years of me playing with this and just working with these ideas. And I did get published in 2017 for doing electrical stim with needles. That shouldn't have been a new idea, but I guess it was.
Question about, everyday clinic practice.
Yeah.
Your system how does it fit into the reality of evaluation and treat in our
We're getting
present
there.
system?
Thank you.
I think that's that's what we're
Yeah,
going
that is where we
Okay,
are.
but that's a
we're
great question,
leading,
right?
Yes,
'Cause it's
thank
like-
you for that segue, because
Yeah.
that is exactly the point of all of this.
Yes.
What's the point of like talking about this if we don't apply it to the clinic? The article highlight the necessity of a paradigm shift in our profession, which is why I love the article, because they are raising the idea of we need a change. I love that.
So do you read?
We need new methodologies to explain complex movements, and this is what my approach has offered. Oh, okay, I was going back to 2017. All right, so see, this is so cool. You asked me, like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Well, I had a patient, 2016, 2017, he had anterior tibialis rupture and repair. And he had been to some other clinics, this was in Texas, been to other clinics, yada, 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 doing therapy. He got discouraged with it. It wasn't getting better. He was still tripping over his foot. So after 2 months of no therapy, he ended up with me. And I take a look, I'm like, they've really done a good job of strengthening your toe extensors. Because his toes were like, right?
Yep.
But his anterior tib, nothing. I'm like, you can't put electrodes on an anterior tib that hasn't worked in 5 months and make it fire. Well, I'm like, well, I'm gonna stick some needles in there and zap it. And no, these were the early days of me.
Playing
I
around
think
with
I
your zaps.
used a machine that was a little too strong. But, but the point was, I got it contracting.
After
I got it contracting. Now he still is tripping over it a little bit, but that, when I finally went back and read the surgical report, they attached it a little more proximal or a little bit different attachment point, so he wasn't going to get the leverage. But, and this is such a great story. So I wrote up this case report. Oh my God, you couldn't pay me enough money to go back and read my original submission. And I really appreciate this because one of the reviewers sent back, is like, we really like your idea, but for the rewrite, please find someone who has a good command of the English language.
Oh my goodness.
I was not offended at all. Because I'm like, they like my idea, and I know I can't write.
What journal was that?
JOSPT, but yeah, that was fun. Well, I'd rather get a review like that versus my latest one to Medical Hypothesis. I submitted an article, and the associate editor, this looks like an introduction to physical therapy.
That was the Lancet thing? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was the Medical Hypothesis article. That's the feedback I got from them. All right, so let's get into it.
Good for you for having the chutzpah to try it anyway.
I think that's why I'm just swipe
I
forward.
don't think you lack chutzpah. I don't think that's a problem for you at all.